presentations are happening under the guidance of Dr. Sharda Jain. Then going on to the seizures. So when we say the word seizure, so this is our overview that how we'll be discussing seizures today. Going on to the definition, then etiology, then clinical features and treatment. And before I start seizures, just one important point is what is the exact difference between a seizure and epilepsy, and are they the same terms, and why do we keep using them? So first is seizure. So seizure, there are three important terms when we say seizure. Basically, our brain is full of electrical impulses, but when those electrical impulses becomes abnormal, excessive and hypersynchronous discharges, then it leads to some activity called a seizure. So seizure is a paroxysmal event due to three things, and these three words are abnormal, excessive and hypersynchronous CNS discharges. So these are the three important terms when I am defining seizures. So basically abnormal means that they are not normal, and they are excessive, they are more in nature, and those hypersynchronous discharges, that is all the neurons will be in sync, and then they will cause something called a seizure activity. And then coming on to what is the difference between seizure and epilepsy. So basically seizure can happen to anyone. Seizure can be provoked also, unprovoked also. But when I talk about epilepsy, it means there is recurrent seizures due to chronic underlying cause. There can be multiple causes of epilepsy. So first, let's clear seizures and epilepsy again. Basically, when I say epilepsy, it means it should be more than or equal to 2 seizures due to unprovoked causes. Okay. So the terminology of provoked and unprovoked should also be cleared. Basically, if I give a person hypernatremia for some reason, I start infusing that person with lot of sodium, suppose hypersaline, 3% saline, and the patient goes for hypernatremia, the patient will have seizure. So it was the provoked cause. Someone provoked the brain to cause the seizure. And in those cases, I won't say that it is epilepsy. In epilepsy, the brain should do the seizure. The brain should generate the seizure in an unprovoked manner. So suppose someone has some scarring in the brain, maybe due to any reason. Someone had tuberculosis of brain, TB meningitis, or tuberculoma in the brain, and then we gave the treatment for tuberculosis. The patient healed, and there was some scarring left inside the brain, and that scarring is now causing seizures. Then we can call it epilepsy because it is repeated seizures and there is no provoked cause. So differentiating seizure and epilepsy are very important, and treatment for epilepsy goes on different lines while treatment for seizure go on different lines. When we say seizure, and then we need to treat the cause first. Treating the cause is very important, that what has provoked that seizure. Then going on to the etiology for anything can be remembered by this simple mnemonic cue, that is vitamin O. So basically in this case it's vitamin O. Basically vascular causes, infectious causes, toxins, autoimmune causes, metabolic causes, iatrogenic causes, neoplastic causes, and obstetric causes. So first we will talk about seizures at the moment. I will not go to epilepsy, which is recurrent seizures. So seizures is basically first is vascular causes. So we have already covered this in our other presentation also, that hemorrhagic stroke, ischemic strokes, intracranial bleeds, and even venous thrombosis can present as seizure itself. Then infections of the brain, meningitis, encephalitis. Then organophosphates, we have discussed this in toxicology videos also, that organophosphates can cause seizures. Then autoimmune causes, then sodium disturbances, hyponatremia or hypernatremia, metabolic causes can cause seizures. Then iatrogenic, just now we have studied that tricyclic antidepressants can cause seizures. So if a patient was prescribed antidepressants, he took antidepressants in excess, and that's why he got seizures. Then sodium correction, rapid sodium correction by the doctors can cause seizures. then neoplastic. So brain tumors can cause seizure, and in obstetric causes we know it's the eclampsia or imminent eclampsia which can present as seizures which are fatal to fetus. So these are the important causes of seizure. Then if we suspect any patient, if we see any patient of seizure, then we should, if the patient is non-known epileptic, then these are the possible causes. This is important about seizures. Then if a patient is known epileptic, already on drugs, then this is a very classical history that a 17-year-old known epileptic on treatment took some alcohol in night, and then next morning he suffered from seizure. So alcohol itself did not cause the seizure, it was the alcohol withdrawal. Since alcohol is a brain depressant, the moment the alcohol started to wear off from the body, the brain went into hyperdrive and caused the seizure. So yes, coming on to the status epilepticus. So what is status epilepticus? Normally, what should we know that if we see seizure and anyone suffering from seizure or anyone undergoing seizure in nearby surroundings, first of all, we should not get scared, because any seizure will not last more than 60 to 90 seconds. But there is one special entity called a status epilepticus where the seizure will last for more than 5 minutes. It can, though there the immediate intervention is required, and they should be treated in the emergency. Immediately they should be taken. But normally a seizure lasts only for 1 to 1.5 minutes. So we see anyone suffering from seizure, we need not worry. We will let the seizure get terminated and then we will take them to hospital. So there are two types of seizures. Basically, there are generalized and focal. Then there are multiple types under generalized and focal. This is beyond our scope of discussion. The generalized seizures, basically, what we need to remember, they are the seizure which the discharges are present in both the sides of brain. The whole brain gets involved. While in the focal seizure, it's only one small part of the brain where the focal discharges are happening. So pathogenesis, again, very simple. Then it is the increase in excitatory neurotransmitter and decrease in inhibitory neurotransmitter. So coming to definition again, it was abnormal, excessive and hypersynchronous CNS discharges. So to have excessive CNS discharges, I need to have excitatory neurotransmitter more and inhibitory neurotransmitter low. As simple as that, whenever I want to excite any area, either I can inhibit it less or I can excite it more through the neurotransmitters. So there's only one neurotransmitter in the whole figure we can see, which is inhibitory, which is GABA, and rest other are mostly excitatory. So it is the excess of others and or deficiency of GABA. And this is the same principle our drugs work on. They increase the inhibitory neurotransmitter and they decrease the excitatory neurotransmitter.
Correct.
So if we understand the definition and pathogenesis, then treatment becomes very simple. Our treatment goals become very simple. Then going on to the clinical features. So yes, I will say the slide which is there in the presentation right now, it is the summary of the whole seizure, and this is the most important slide. So if we understand the slide, we will understand the seizure very well.
Good.
So this seizure, basically, I will talk about the generalized tonic-clonic seizure, which is a subtype of generalized seizure, and it is the most common seizure which we will see in a clinical practice, and anyone suffering from generalized tonic-clonic seizure. So first, we need to identify that how a generalized tonic-clonic seizure are happening. What are the parts of that seizure, and what is actually happening with the patient. So, and since we also need to confirm immediately that it was a seizure, so we need to know how a seizure, a generalized tonic-clonic seizure happens, and what are the things. So, as the name says, it is a tonic-clonic seizure. So there is a tonic phase and then there is a clonic phase. So first is tonic phase. So tonic phase basically is very straightforward, that all the body muscle tone is increasing. Wherever the body muscles are there in the body, the tone is increasing. So the moment the body tones increases, the patient will fall backward, not forwards. If you think logically, a person is standing and he loses all his body muscle tone, he becomes really weak. The person will fall front, not backward. And when the body muscle tones become very high, the full body muscles become very stiff, the patient will fall backward. So it is our observation only that since the patient has fallen backward, we will say, okay, he is going into the seizure. The moment we see a patient falling backwards, maybe some person is standing and he falls backward for no reason, then we say patient is maybe going for seizure. If a person has fallen front, then I know that it is something related to the low tone, not the high tone, or maybe the patient has become weak. So this is the first point when I'm watching for a seizure, that the patient will always fall backward, not forward. Like a usual, when a person falls, usually he will always fall front. But in case of a seizure, the patient will fall backward because of the increased body muscle tone. Then, since everything in the body has contracting, even the diaphragm will contracting, the person will have a loud moan. There will be a loud sound. That is called an ictal moan, sometimes seen, sometimes not seen. Then the patient will be apneic. So this apnea and cyanosis is one reason that we say that we need to look for it inside we need to prevent seizure inside in the pregnancy, because in eclampsia patients, if they go for apnea and cyanosis, the fetus will be deficient of oxygen, and even though there is a possibility that the fetus might die, or there is another possibility that the fetus suffers from hypoxic damage, and that can lead to cerebral palsy and other things in the future. So we need to avoid eclampsia in patients at all costs. This is also one reason that the patient becomes apneic. There is no breathing for the time that patient is in tonic phase. Then there is a risk of tongue bite, and this tongue bite happens during the incidence of tonic phase. Then there is risk of aspiration. So since the patient might vomit and the patient might pass urine, since the patient might pass urine and pass vomit, this vomit can go inside the lungs and can cause chemical pneumonitis. Again, it is a very dreaded complication and might require ICU admission. So we need to avoid aspiration. We will discuss this in treatment, that how to avoid this, how to prevent this aspiration and urination and all those things when we see a patient of going for GTCS. Then comes the clonic phase, where we will see hands and legs full going for rhythmic jerking. And then lastly, the seizure terminates and the patient is left unconscious and flaccid. And there is a possibility that when the patient wakes up, he will be in delirium or confusion. And then, or if the patient, there is a possibility that the patient might feel paralysis. So that we call it Todd's palsy, that paralysis after seizure. So again, when a patient comes with any paralysis, I need to ask a history that did the patient suffered a seizure. So I know that it is due to my GTCS. Then if a patient is in delirium, I need to figure out the history that did patient suffer from any seizure. Then I know that delirium is because of seizure and it is not because of any underlying cause. Then to avoid the risk of aspiration during the tonic phase, I should always turn the patient on the left lateral position when I see someone falling backwards. So when I turn the patient on left lateral position, the secretions keep falling out of the mouth and do not get aspirated. Then if I am taking a history of long back, like the patient is saying that he suffered a seizure and he is also not sure, then we'll ask that has he passed urine after the attack, or when he woke up after the attack, had he already passed urine and vomit was there inside the mouth of frothing. Then okay, we can confirm that through the history only that in past the patient has suffered from seizure. So this was the summary of a GTCS seizure, and we should know it, each and every word of it, to understand a seizure. And one more thing, that during a seizure, it's the sympathetic body discharge which increases more. So all my vitals, heart rate will increase, BP will increase, my temperature will increase, and everything. So this is how it happens. This a figure that first the patient will fall backwards, then he will undergo clonic jerks of limb, body and heads, and then later he will become flaccid. So these are the three phases, and it usually lasts for 60 to 90 seconds, and it gets terminated. So if we see anyone with a seizure, we just put them in left lateral position, and we should not put and hold any part of their body. Let them move holding one part of the body can even cause fractures. So we should only put the patient's head into left lateral position, and after the seizure gets over, we should get them medical help. Then the same thing, tonic and clonic phase, and then the termination phase. Then coming to investigations, whenever the person is coming to emergency OPD, emergency or anything with seizure, then I need to do the basic things like CBC for infections, glucose for hypoglycemia, electrolytes for electrolyte disturbances, KFT for renal failure. Then ECG I should do, so that again, everything is basically comes out to one thing. So history is very important. So if a child is coming with seizure, there is a possibility of hypoglycemia. But if an adult of 60-year-old is coming, the possibility of stroke becomes more. So I need to know the epidemiology, the patients, what the patient was doing, and also what is the patient. Does already patient have blood pressure, patients have diabetes problems, and all those things. Then that's how I start narrowing my diagnosis. I won't consider a diagnosis of hypoglycemia in a patient who's not diabetic. But if a patient is already on insulin and sulfonylureas, okay, I can consider, okay, there is a possibility of hypoglycemia. So it becomes, the background settings become very important in every case. So we need to have a brief history always. We cannot treat a patient without history. Then lumbar puncture again for infections, EEG to detect the discharges and the location, and then CT scans and MRI are very important for CT scan and MRI, or again important part of dictum of finding out what type of stroke and other things to find out any lesions inside the brain. Then we'll just finish the lecture with treatment. So first of all, if any person or any child for that matter undergoes seizure, the first step is do not panic, act smartly, turn them on one side, and then first do not restrain the person. So if we try holding the whole body so that it doesn't move, it might harm the patient. Then put them in left lateral position so that whatever the secretions are there inside the mouth, it keeps falling out and they do not aspirate them. Then call the first aid, call the ambulance. Then coming to the treatment, yesterday also I have discussed the same thing, ABCD, EFG. Same thing even applies for any emergency, that we need to check for airway, breathing, circulation first. Then diazepam for breaking the seizure if it is status epilepticus or any seizure which has not terminated when brought to ED. Then electrolytes check, we start fluids, we give them glucose and thiamine. Thiamine of 100 mg IV is given, immediately it is given irrespective of the cause. And then there is temperature check. So all these things have to be done when the patient comes with seizure. If the seizure is not stopping, then I need to give diazepam and lorazepam. If the seizure has stopped, then I will do all my investigations and will try to figure out the cause. And if the patient suffers from another seizure, I will start them on prophylaxis. Then this is one dictum we follow in status epilepticus. I've just put it. So there are two things. There is treatment of epilepsy and there is a treatment of seizure. So we are not discussing treatment of epilepsy, which is very type of seizure oriented. So if we need to figure out, they have generalized seizure, focal seizure. Under focal seizure also there are 5 types. Under generalized seizure also they have 5 types. So that comes under the neurology practice, and it is not as such an emergency, and we need to refer those patients to neurology. But we are not discussing those things. They are very seizure type oriented therapy. We are just studying a therapy where the seizure is ongoing and maybe the patient is come to ED and we have started on them on drugs, and then also it is not working. So what is the next step? What is the next step? So the first step is always giving them lorazepam. And if lorazepam is not available, then per rectal diazepam. So lorazepam for adult is given as 4 mg IV over 2 minutes, and if it is not available or IV access is not available because the whole body is shaking, then I will take diazepam 20 mg and I will put it per rectally. And then when the seizure will stop, then I will gain the IV access. Gaining the IV access is very important because I need to administer everything to that same IV access. Then if above fails, then I go for phosphenitoin or phenytoin. If that also fails, then I will go for propofol, valproate, midazolam or phenobarbital. And if that also fails, I will put a patient on coma, which means if I have reached till third step, which means the seizure has gone for more than 60 minutes. If the seizure is not stopping with even this many interventions, the seizure has gone for more than 60 minutes. In those cases, I will put the patient in coma, and if that is also not working, then for super refractory seizures, we go for pulse steroid and IV immunoglobulins. So this is this much only about seizure, and I hope it was very crisp and clear. That slide defining the tonic and clonic phase is the most important, and we need to identify each and every step to see for the complications and interventions.